two beautiful countries in the world, India and Australia. This is eCritCare Podcast about evidence-based critical care medicine, helping you to save lives. Here are thoughts on controversies in critical care. And now, here are your hosts, Dr. Swapnil Pawar from Sydney and Dr. Jose Chacko from India.
Welcome to eCritCare Podcast. This is our episode number 87. And today I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Jose Chacko. So welcome, Dr. Chacko.
Good evening, Swapnil. How about things with you?
Things are getting a little bit tricky at the moment in Sydney. As we all are aware, I guess the number of cases with Omicron are increasing day by day in Sydney. It seems that the hospitalization rate is much lesser compared to Delta wave. But obviously, just given the sheer number of patients getting affected with Omicron, I guess there is a significant concern hospital system might get overwhelmed in next few weeks. So fingers crossed. Those things in India.
We have a fair number of Omicron cases as well, maybe 300 or so. Nothing like a surge at the moment. But again, we are keeping our fingers crossed and getting prepared for the worst case scenario if it does unfurl.
Yeah, I guess somehow this COVID is not going away. And I guess we probably have to live with COVID for next few months. And I guess that's why the booster dose is quite important. And so I guess I need to highlight double vaccinated, make sure that go and get your booster in order to protect yourself from this so-called third wave of COVID-19. Now, coming back to the podcast, I guess this year has been quite challenging, but despite we managed to get through this year and continue to produce high quality content. And this is the last episode of year 2021. And today we have decided to discuss another trial, which was recently published in JAMA around the use of high flow nasal cannulae in COVID-19. Now, we have discussed this before, and especially in the beginning of the pandemic, when the use of high-flow cannulae was questioned in patients with COVID-19, mainly due to the risk of transmitting the infection to healthcare workers. And subsequently, over the period of time, we realized that not every single patient with COVID-19 needs intubation. And also the self-proning strategy works quite magnificently in patients with COVID-19. And over the period of time, the use of high-flow nasal oxygen has increased significantly in patients affected with COVID-19. However, there was no significant scientific data available to justify or to question the use of high-flow nasal cannulae in patients with COVID-19. So this trial, which was published in JAMA recently, has evaluated the efficacy of high-flow nasal cannulae versus conventional oxygen therapy in patients who are affected with severe COVID-19. And the question that this trial was trying to address is, does the use of high-flow nasal oxygen therapy through nasal cannula compared with conventional oxygen therapy reduce the requirement of intubation and time to clinical improvement among patients with severe COVID-19? So, Dr. Chacko, can you please walk us through the methodology and the results of this trial, please?
The high-flow randomized controlled trial was conducted across 3 centers in Colombia over a 5-month period from August 2020 to January 2021. Patients were randomized in a 1-to-1 ratio to receive high-flow nasal cannula or conventional oxygen. It was an unblinded trial. Obviously, you can't hide devices very well. And the main investigators, however, were unaware of group outcomes until unlocking of the database. The randomization was web-based and stratified by study site. The study included adult patients with suspected or confirmed SARS-CoV-2 infection and acute respiratory failure with a PF ratio of less than 200, along with clinical signs of respiratory distress, including the use of accessory muscles of breathing and tachypnea of more than 25 per minute. The time interval between fulfilling criteria for respiratory failure and randomization was less than 6 hours. They excluded patients who had a PCO2 of more than 55 millimeters of mercury, those with poor left ventricular function with ejection fraction less than 40%. Patients with advanced COPD were excluded. Patients who required hospitalization for COPD within the past year were excluded. Those with peripheral demyelinating disease, advanced cirrhosis, anatomical abnormalities that precluded the use of high-flow nasal cannulae, and patients who were not expected to survive were also excluded. So what did they do? In the high-flow nasal cannula arm, they set initial flow rate of 60 liters per minute with FiO2 of 100%. The FiO2 was adjusted to maintain oxygen saturation of 92% or higher. Flow rate was decreased if the patient felt uncomfortable. High-flow nasal cannula therapy continued until intubation or when criteria were met for weaning of therapy. The criteria for weaning included improvement in respiratory distress, a PF ratio of higher than 200 millimeters of mercury, oxygen saturation of 92% or more with less than 9 liters per minute with a conventional oxygen device. And if patients develop recurrent hypoxemia after weaning first time around, they could reinstitute high-flow nasal therapy unless intubation was imminently required. In the conventional arm, oxygen was administered through any low-flow device, which included nasal prongs, any type of mask, including Venturi mask without reservoirs, either alone or in combination. The flow rate and FiO2 were adjusted for a saturation of 92% or more, and the oxygen therapy was continued until intubation or recovery. Management common to both the groups included the use of awake-prone as at the judgment of the clinician. The decision for intubation was, however, based on pre-specified criteria. Patients who were on high-flow nasal cannula were continued on this therapy during laryngoscopy and intubation. The use of high-flow nasal cannula was allowed as appropriate in both the groups after extubation. In this study, they did not use non-invasive ventilation based on the local recommendations. Other modalities of treatment, including steroids, antibiotics, antiviral treatment, etc., were administered as appropriate based on clinician judgment. The follow-up period was 28 days, and if the hospital discharge occurred before 28 days, follow-up was carried out through a telephonic interview. How did they calculate the sample size? The authors calculated the sample size based on an intubation rate of 60% according to their own previous experience. So for this, the sample size required was 196 patients to demonstrate a reduction in intubation rate by 20% in the high-flow nasal cannula arm for 80% power. And for a reduction in the time to recovery by 2 days, the sample size required was 160 patients, again for 80% power. So they arrived at a sample size of 196 patients. However, things did not go as planned during the course of the pandemic, as happened to most of us. Many patients had to be transferred from the study centers to non-study centers for continued care due to logistical reasons. Continued protocolized care and follow-up are not easy in these patients, and hence they were expected to be excluded from the final analysis. So the final sample size was reset at 220 patients to allow for transfer outs. The investigators screened 652 patients and they excluded 432 for various reasons. Thus, 220 patients were randomized, 99 randomized to the high-flow nasal cannula group, and 100 patients in the conventional oxygen therapy arm were included in the final analysis. 6 patients from the high-flow group and 7 from the conventional oxygen therapy group were transferred to another facility. What were the outcomes that they looked at? They looked at 2 co-primary outcomes. Co-primary outcome 1 was the intubation rate within 28 days of follow-up, and this was significantly lower with the use of high-flow nasal cannula. 34 of 99, which is 34.3%, versus 51 of 100, 51%, in favor of high-flow nasal cannula with a hazard ratio of 0.62, 95% confidence interval 0.39 to 0.96, which was statistically significant. The second co-primary outcome was the time to clinical recovery in 28 days. Clinical recovery was defined as a reduction of 2 or more points on a modified 7-category ordinal scale from the time of randomization. So they found that the median time to clinical recovery within 28 days was 11 days in the quartile range 9 to 14 in patients who were randomized to high flow, compared to 14 days in the quartile range 11 to 19 days in those who received conventional oxygen therapy. This again was significantly in favor of the use of high flow nasal cannula, hazard ratio 1.39, confidence level 1 to 1.92. So the time to clinical recovery in 28 days was significantly less among patients who received high flow nasal cannula compared to conventional oxygen therapy. The number of patients who demonstrated clinical recovery in 28 days was 77.8% versus 71%, high flow nasal cannula versus conventional oxygen therapy. They looked at several secondary outcomes as well, which included the number of patients intubated within 7 days, 31.3 in the high flow group and 50 in the conventional oxygen therapy group. The number of patients intubated within the first 14 days was 34% in the high flow group versus 51% in the conventional oxygen therapy group. The ventilation-free days at 28 days was significantly higher with high flow nasal cannula, 28 days versus 24 days. The requirement for renal replacement therapy, the duration of stay in ICU and hospital were not different between the two groups. Mortality at 14 days and 28 days were also not different between the two groups. The incidence of bacterial pneumonia and bacteremia were relatively small in both groups. They looked at a few tertiary outcomes as well, which included the duration of treatment with high flow nasal cannula or conventional oxygen therapy prior to intubation was not significantly different regardless of the device used. The time spent with an FiO2 of 70% or higher was significantly more with conventional oxygen therapy compared to high flow nasal cannula. The extrapulmonary organ involvement at 7 days was not different between the two groups based on the SOFA scores. They also performed subgroup analysis, and the subgroups they studied were patients who were 60 years or more versus less than 60 years. And in this subgroup analysis that they found, the intubation rate was less in patients less than 60 years old with the high flow nasal cannula compared to conventional oxygen therapy. Similarly, they looked at interleukin-6 levels of 100 picograms per mil or more versus less. Here again, the intubation rates were less with high flow nasal cannula if the IL-6 level was less than 100 picograms per mil. They looked at the subgroup of patients with a PF ratio of 100 or more versus less than 100, but in this case, there was no significant difference between the two groups. And there was no difference between the two groups in regard to the time to clinical recovery when they studied these three subgroups that I mentioned. They also, in a post hoc analysis, looked at site as a random effect, and it showed no difference in the primary outcome. It again favored high flow nasal cannula with reduced intubation rates and an increased probability of clinical recovery regardless of the site. So this study showed that in patients with COVID-19 and respiratory failure, intubation rate within the first 28 days of follow-up was significantly lower with high flow nasal cannula compared to conventional oxygen devices. And the time to clinical recovery in 28 days was also significantly less with high flow nasal cannula compared to conventional oxygen devices.
Thanks, Dr. Chakko. This trial is quite interesting. This is an open label, multi-center randomized controlled trial conducted in Colombia. And this trial did not test the actual physiological mechanism underlying the improvement of respiratory mechanics or how the high flow oxygen therapy leads to limitation of lung injury. Instead, it tested or evaluated only the clinical outcomes, assuming that the mechanisms involved in preventing the progression of lung injury, relief of respiratory effort, and improvement of gas exchange should be improved by applying the high flow oxygen therapy. Now, there was another trial published in the early phase of the pandemic comparing high flow oxygen therapy through nasal cannula versus non-invasive ventilation through a helmet interface, which resulted in no significant difference in number of days free of respiratory support within 28 days. However, in this trial, the rate of endotracheal intubation was significantly lower in the non-invasive ventilation group, while the number of days free of invasive ventilation was significantly higher in NIV group compared to high flow oxygen therapy. So this trial did not apply that kind of stepwise escalation strategy with regards to oxygen therapy. They either applied the conventional oxygen therapy or high flow oxygen therapy and then switched to mechanical ventilation. So I guess this is probably the potential limitation where authors could have tested either as a third arm of NIV or use NIV instead of high flow oxygen therapy and then progressing to mechanical ventilation. And what we have seen in the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic is that many patients got away without intubation with the use of combination of high flow oxygen therapy and NIV. Having said that, this trial had several strengths. The first one is the group randomization was consistently maintained until the intubation and invasive mechanical ventilation support was started or until the clinical recovery was reached. Also, the results are in agreement with the studies of acute hypoxic respiratory failure due to other etiologies. And we see that in a clinical practice where we do see the benefit of high flow oxygen therapy compared to conventional oxygen therapy. And also, this study has a very well-defined protocol, including pre-specified criteria for endotracheal intubation and extubation, with only one violation regarding the therapy allocation. And the last important strength was the results are again consistent even after the sensitivity analysis, including the patients were transferred to other centers due to administrative reasons within 72 hours after randomization. So overall, it's a welcome randomized controlled trial, which has obviously added some significant information to our knowledge about use of high flow oxygen therapy in patients with severe COVID-19. Now, as you mentioned in the flow chart or the consort diagram, we do see there are large number of exclusions due to various reasons. And almost 1/3 of the patients got intubated within few hours of coming to hospital. And I guess in that kind of cohort, whether NIV would have been more beneficial than high flow, we don't know. Also, the study has major limitation due to its nature because it's an open label trial. There's no blinding, so which may have affected the assessment of outcomes. Secondly, all participants were recruited only from 3 centers within one country, and that to Colombia. So that obviously restricts the generalizability of the results of this trial. This trial design considered 2 co-primary endpoints, and that's always been the major limitations from my point of view, because that leads to potential of type 1 error. And also with analysis of secondary outcomes, it was not adjusted by multiplicity. So most of the secondary outcome results or even a tertiary outcome results should be considered more exploratory in nature. And the sample size of this trial and the number of events were relatively quite small. And the way the calculated sample size was quite interesting. They assumed that 60% failure with conventional oxygen therapy. But what we have seen in real life, that the failure rate in conventional oxygen therapy, especially with patients had severe COVID-19, the failure rate was quite high. So assuming only 60% patients will get intubated with conventional oxygen therapy, obviously it might have resulted in an underpowered trial. And as I mentioned, obviously this trial mainly looked at the clinical outcomes, but this trial did not explore the effects of high flow oxygen therapy on the actual respiratory mechanics and how does that actually leads to improvement in COVID-19 outcomes. Not powered to demonstrate the differences in mortality. So I guess, which is probably the more meaningful outcome with regards to COVID-19. So these are the kind of main thoughts about this trial from my side. What are your thoughts, Dr. Jaffer?
Yeah, it is a fairly good study, I would say, that looked at specifically the efficacy of high flow nasal cannula in patients with COVID-19 and respiratory failure. And I think this is probably one of the few controlled studies which has asked this question. And they have come up with a very clear-cut answer saying that high flow nasal cannula is indeed associated with better clinical outcomes in reducing the intubation rates and quickening the time to recovery among patients with respiratory failure and COVID-19. There are, of course, many limitations, as you mentioned, One of the problems, of course, is with the sample size, because they assumed a 20% reduction in the intubation rate. The sample size actually became very small, and it may have resulted in a study that came up with a false positive outcome. The other thing, of course, as you again mentioned, was the non-use of NIV. NIV is, by today's standards, a very well accepted modality of treatment in acute respiratory failure with COVID-19. And several patients, of course, go on NIV for a prolonged period of time, and they do reasonably well with that. Some of them, of course, do require intubation. There are some studies also. You mentioned about helmet NIV. In fact, just to digressing a little bit, but helmet NIV has actually been shown to be better in terms of preservation of PEEP compared to mask NIV. So that again may be something that would need to be studied further in COVID-19 patients. And one of the other important limitations is the limited duration of follow-up, which is 28 days. They don't look at longer-term outcomes. There are many patients that we came across in our practice, particularly during the second wave, who had a very long ICU stay, very long time on the ventilator, and some of them actually did not survive, and some of them were discharged on home oxygen or higher levels of support. So that is something that they haven't looked at, which is again something that you would need to follow up for patients with COVID-19 related acute respiratory failure. So these are some of the limitations, but overall, I think it's a reasonably robust evidence that supports the use of high-flow nasal cannula in patients with COVID-19 related acute respiratory failure.
I agree with you, because obviously this trial will help the guidelines to strengthen the recommendations regarding the use of high-flow oxygen therapy in patients with COVID-19. And especially within Sydney, we saw some of the variability in practices with regards to use of high-flow oxygen therapy in the respiratory ward settings, where most of the ICUs were quite proactive in use of high-flow oxygen therapy. However, most of the respiratory wards were a bit reluctant to use or initiate a high-flow oxygen therapy or NIV in the ward settings. And I guess this trial probably highlights the importance that if you commence high-flow oxygen therapy in addition to proning, that may actually avoid intubations and might actually prevent ICU admissions altogether. And that obviously will have a significant impact on the healthcare resources in various settings. So this trial has got its own significance. Running any trial with use of high-flow oxygen therapy and comparing the outcomes, especially in the pandemic setting, can be quite challenging. But again, hats off to authors for completing the trial and managing to get the results out in a timely fashion, which will obviously help us to continue some of the practices that we found useful during the second wave of COVID-19 pandemic. So yeah, I guess overall it will help us to consolidate the practices that we are already following in patients with severe COVID-19. And I guess those sites who are not using high-flow oxygen therapy, obviously that will help them to now change their practices after the results of this trial. So Dr. Chacko, again, thanks very much for the whole year, I guess. It has been enormously productive year despite all the challenges that were thrown at us with COVID-19 pandemic, and wish you a very happy Christmas and happy New Year. And obviously we'll be probably back in New Year's time with many more episodes.
Thanks a lot, Swapnil. Merry Christmas to you and a wonderful 2022. Hopefully we can carry on with the same intensity for the new year too.
That's correct. So thanks again. So all the listeners, stay safe, and we'll see you in New Year 2022. Till then, goodbye and have a nice time.
Thanks for listening. Goodbye. See you in the new year.
Thanks for listening to eCritCare Podcast. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, www.critcareedu.com.au, to your friends and colleagues. And please leave us a positive review on iTunes. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. Check us out on Facebook at Critical Care Education. Join us next time for another edition of eCritCare Podcast.